Iconian death rays scorched Earth's surface as millions perished, defenseless against the sudden alien onslaught. Ruthless Commander Gruss watched impassively from his warship as humanity's greatest cities crumbled to dust under his bombardment. The year was 2185. Earth was under attack and her forces were hopelessly outmatched. Former Space Marine Andrew Gray barely escaped the destruction of his hometown. As buildings collapsed around him, he dragged injured civilians from the rubble, hell-bent on saving as many as he could. Gray soon received new orders. Report to Earth Defense HQ. Upon arrival, ashen-faced leaders briefed him on the dire situation. Prior to the assault, mankind had no knowledge of the Iconians' existence. Now this advanced alien species seemed committed to nothing less than humanity's total annihilation. But there was one desperate hope. Scientists had recently discovered an ancient alien artifact buried deep beneath the moon's surface. It might be a weapon, or even a fleet, left eons ago by a civilization that had fought the Iconians. Earth's survival hinged on uncovering its secrets. As Gruss's forces continued ravaging the planet, Andrew Gray and his team raced to the moon, Earth's final gambit. In an underground lunar hangar, they found their miracle. Colossal, technologically advanced ships bearing human writing. Humanity's ancestors had once commanded a star-spanning fleet, powerful enough to battle the Iconians. An ancient AI stirred to life, addressing Gray as Commander. No time for questions. He and his team urgently worked to activate the ships. On Earth, billions huddled in terror as the Iconians prepared their final genocidal assault. From the lunar base erupted a mighty human battle fleet, with Andrew Gray at the helm. He christened them the Retribution Fleet, humanity's last line of defense. Streaking into space, they set course for the Iconian Armada, ready for a climactic battle that would decide mankind's fate. With the sudden emergence of the Retribution Fleet, could Commander Andrew Gray turn the tide against Gruss and his world-destroying Iconians? Or would the malevolent aliens eradicate humanity once and for all? The moment of truth had arrived as the ancestral human warships closed on their enemy, weapons blazing, with the survival of Earth in the balance. As the Retribution Fleet surged out from the ancient lunar hangar, Andrew Gray wasted no time. He opened a comm channel to Earth Defense HQ. This is Commander Andrew Gray of the Retribution Fleet, broadcasting on all Earth frequencies. I have taken command of this fleet of advanced human warships discovered beneath the moon's surface. We're moving to engage the Iconian forces. All available Earth forces are to fall in with us and await further orders. There was a moment of stunned silence, then an astonished voice crackled over the comm. Commander Gray, this is General Mikhailovich at Earth Defense HQ. Your fleet, it's a miracle. We thought all hope was lost. You have full operational command of all Earth forces. Godspeed, Commander. Even as Andrew conferred with HQ, the Retribution Fleet was already hurtling towards the Iconian Armada in high Earth orbit, weapon systems locking on. On the Iconian command ship, a stunned Gruss watched the human fleet appear as if from nowhere. Where did they come from? Gruss demanded, slamming a fist on his command console. No matter. All ships, engage the humans. Wipe them out now. The Iconian fleet scrambled to reorient themselves towards the new threat as Andrew's ships bore down on them, mega laser batteries charged and ready. Then the two fleets clashed head-on in a cataclysm of laser fire and exploding ships. Andrew's fleet had the element of surprise, and their advanced weaponry and defenses proved devastating. Iconian ships exploded left and right as the human fleet cut through their ranks. But the Iconians quickly adapted, concentrating fire on the human ships. On the bridge of his ship, the Vengeance, Andrew gritted his teeth as consoles exploded around him and damage reports flooded in. They were holding their own, but the Iconians were too many. They needed to take out Gruss and break the fleet's coordination. Prep boarding shuttles, Andrew ordered. We're taking the fight to Gruss. It's the only way. Minutes later, Andrew and a heavily armed boarding party blasted out of the Vengeance in assault shuttles, dodging weapons fire as they rocketed towards Gruss's massive dreadnought. They sliced through the ship's hull and burst into the corridors, gunning down Iconian warriors as alarms blared. Step by step, they advanced through a storm of laser fire, the bulkheads ringing with the screams of the dying and the smell of scorched metal thick in the air. Andrew led from the front, blasting away with his plasma rifle, cold rage burning in his eyes. At last, they reached the bridge doors. Andrew doused them in plasma fire until they burst inward, then charged through. Gruss was waiting, a crackling energy whip in his hands, his eyes alight with malice. "You humans never learn," Gruss sneered as Andrew approached, weapons leveled. "We destroyed your ancestors millennia ago. Now we will finish the job and wipe your pathetic species from the stars forever." "Why?" Andrew snarled. "Why attack us?" Gruss laughed cruelly. "Because you were destined to become a threat, just as your ancestors were. We Iconians will not make the same mistake again. This time we will annihilate you." With a roar, Gruss lashed out with his energy whip. Andrew rolled aside, the crackling tendrils scoring the deck. He came up firing, but Gruss was preternaturally fast, dodging the plasma bolts. The Iconian lunged, the whip wrapping around Andrew's rifle and wrenching it from his hands. Andrew drew his vibroblade and charged. The two leaders clashed in the center of the bridge, trading vicious blows as the deck shuddered beneath them. Gruss was strong and fast, his whip a deadly blur. But Andrew fought with the fury of a man with nothing left to lose. He pressed the attack, forcing Gruss back. The Iconian stumbled, and Andrew lunged inside his guard, his blade plunging into Gruss's chest. The Iconian commander staggered back, dark blood seeping from his mouth. With a final sneer, he slammed a clawed hand on a control panel. "If we cannot have this world, then neither will you," he rasped. "Die with your precious Earth, human." Alarms shrieked as a countdown appeared on the screen, a self-destruct sequence. Gruss collapsed, dead, as Andrew rushed to the control panel, trying desperately to abort the detonation. But it was no use. The sequence was locked. "Back to the shuttles!" Andrew yelled to his team. They raced through the corridors as the ship quaked and alarms blared. They barely made it back to the shuttles and rocketed away as Gruss's dreadnought exploded behind them in an apocalyptic fireball. The shockwave slammed into the ships like a hammer blow, sending them tumbling. Andrew's shuttle crashed into the Vengeance's hangar in a shriek of tortured metal. Dazed, aching, he pulled himself from the wreckage to see the Iconian fleet in disarray, their ships shattered and burning, unable to withstand both the shockwave and the renewed assault from the Retribution fleet. It took hours more of brutal fighting and countless lives, but at last the final Iconian ship was destroyed or routed. A ragged cheer went up from the human fleet, but Andrew held up a hand for silence. He had just received a new transmission, and the news was grim. "A second Iconian fleet is incoming," he said to the assembled bridge officers. "Bigger than the first. They know they've been beaten here, and they want revenge." He paused, his eyebrows furrowed. "This is just the beginning. We may have won today, but the war is far from finished. Earth has a chance now, thanks to this fleet, but only if we keep fighting. No matter the odds, no matter the consequences, we will not stop until the Iconian threat is ended once and for all." Andrew looked out the viewport at the blue curve of Earth below, cities still burning from the Iconian assault. They had saved their world today, but the struggle was just beginning. He turned to his crew, eyes hard. "Set course for the lunar base. We have work to do before the Iconians arrive. It's time to take back our future." The Retribution fleet emerged from slipspace near Mars, the red planet's dusty surface filling the view screens. Andrew Gray stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his eyes scanning the barren landscape. "Begin deep scans of the surface," he ordered. "Look for any anomalies or hidden structures." For hours, the fleet combed the Martian terrain. Just as frustration began to set in, a young ensign called out, "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy signature beneath Olympus Mons." Andrew leaned forward, heart racing. "Take us in. Prepare boarding teams." The Vengeance descended through the thin Martian atmosphere. As they approached the base of the massive volcano, a hidden hangar suddenly yawned open, revealing a cavernous facility within. Andrew led the first team into the ancient base. Banks of computers flickered to life as they entered, awakening from millennia of slumber. But the real prize lay deeper within, a vast underground dock housing dozens of sleek warships. "My God," Andrew breathed. "With this fleet, we might stand a chance." They worked frantically to reactivate the dormant vessels, but fate had other plans. Alarms blared throughout the facility. On the surface, Iconian ships warped into orbit, opening fire on the human fleet. "All hands to battle stations!" Andrew roared, racing back to the Vengeance. The skies above Mars erupted in furious combat. Lasers lanced between vessels as fighters dueled in swirling dogfights. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Andrew barked orders as his crew fought to hold the line. In the midst of the chaos, a priority transmission cut through the din. Andrew's blood ran cold as he digested the intercepted Iconian communication. "Sir," his comms officer said, face pale, "the main Iconian armada. It's bigger than we thought, and it's being led by Grand Admiral Korv himself." Andrew's mind raced. Korv was a legend among the Iconians, a brilliant and ruthless commander. If he was leading the attack... "We need those Martian ships online now," Andrew ordered. "They're our only hope." The battle raged on as engineering teams worked desperately to awaken the ancient fleet. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Martian ships surged to life. Andrew allowed himself a moment of triumph as the newly awakened vessels joined the fray, turning the tide against the Iconian vanguard. But the victory was short-lived. A blinding flash lit up the Martian sky as the Iconians unleashed a weapon of terrifying power. The ground heaved and buckled as the beam lanced into the planet's core. "Evacuate the facility," Andrew shouted as the cavern began to collapse around them. They barely made it out as the entire underground base imploded, taking most of the newly awakened fleet with it. Andrew watched in horror as ship after ship was dragged down into the collapsing chasm or crushed by falling debris. With the Retribution fleet in tatters and the main Iconian armada closing in, Andrew made a desperate decision. "All functioning ships, prepare for emergency slipstream jump," he ordered. "We're heading for Saturn." The remnants of the human fleet vanished into slipspace just as Korv's dreadnought appeared in orbit. Andrew could only pray they'd reach their destination in time. They emerged in Saturn's rings, battered but alive. Ancient defense platforms stirred to life, recognizing their human creators. But they had precious little time before the Iconians arrived. "Get those shipyards online," Andrew commanded as he led a skeleton crew into the heart of the decrepit facility. They raced against time, coaxing ancient systems back to life as the first wave of Iconian ships exited slipspace. The battle was joined once more, as Andrew's fleet fought desperately to buy time. With a titanic effort, they managed to bring the shipyards online just as Korv's dreadnought appeared. New human vessels began pouring forth to join the battle, even as waves of Iconian ships hammered their defenses. Andrew took command of the newest battleship to emerge from the yards, leading it straight into the heart of the enemy formation. All around them, Saturn's rings blazed with weapons fire as the two fleets clashed in a furious melee. This was it, humanity's last stand. As his ship plunged deeper into the maelstrom, Andrew steeled himself for the fight of his life. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, would be decided here, amid the rings of Saturn. Saturn's rings blazed with weapons fire as the titanic battle unfolded. The newly awakened ships from the ancient shipyards surged into the fray, their advanced weaponry tearing through the Iconian lines. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Andrew Gray gripped the command rail as his ship shuddered under enemy fire. Through the viewport, he saw Korv's massive dreadnought bearing down on them, its weapons primed to obliterate the vital shipyards. "All ahead, full!" Andrew barked. "Intercept that dreadnought!" The Vengeance lurched forward, engines straining as it moved to block Korv's path. The two flagships collided in a storm of laser fire and missile barrages. Explosions blossomed across both hulls as they traded devastating blows. Sir, shield's at 30%, an officer called out. Andrew's eyes narrowed. Deploy the sunhammer. A hush fell over the bridge as the experimental weapon powered up. Reverse engineered from captured Iconian tech, it was their ace in the hole. A blinding lance of energy erupted from the Vengeance, spearing through Corv's shields and ravaging his ship's systems. Now's our chance, Andrew said, unholstering his sidearm. Prep boarding shuttles. We're taking the fight to Corv. Minutes later, Andrew led a team of Marines through the burning corridors of the Iconian dreadnought. Laser fire crisscrossed the smoky air as they fought their way deeper into the ship. Bodies of friend and foe alike littered the deck, testament to the brutality of the close-quarters combat. A deafening explosion rocked the ship, nearly throwing Andrew off his feet. Corv's voice echoed through the comm systems, tinged with madness. You'll never take this ship, humans. We'll all burn together. He's activated the self-destruct, Andrew growled. Find Corv, now. They raced through the disintegrating vessel, dispatching pockets of Iconian resistance. Critical systems failed around them, sparks raining from ruptured conduits. At last, they reached the armory bay, where Corv had barricaded himself. The Iconian admiral stood amid racks of alien weaponry, his eyes blazing with hate. Come to die, human? Andrew raised his rifle. It's over, Corv. Surrender. With a roar, Corv charged. Andrew's shots went wide as the aliens slammed into him, sending them both crashing into a weapons rack. They grappled furiously, trading vicious blows as the ship shuddered and groaned around them. Corv's claws raked across Andrew's chest, drawing blood. Andrew retaliated with a crushing headbutt that sent the Iconian reeling. They separated, circling warily. Why? Andrew demanded. Why this war? Corv spat blood. Because you were meant to be erased eons ago. We will finish what we started. They clashed again in a flurry of strikes. Andrew felt ribs crack under Corv's onslaught, but he pushed through the pain. With a final, desperate surge, he drove his combat knife up under Corv's chin. The Iconian's eyes widened in shock. As he collapsed, Corv gasped out his final words. Fool! This was just the beginning. Our whole empire comes for you now. Alarms blared as the self-destruct sequence entered its final stages. Andrew staggered out of the armory, his body battered and bleeding. Marines rushed to support him as they raced back to the extraction point. They barely made it to the shuttles before Corv's dreadnought tore itself apart in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave battered the Vengeance as Andrew's shuttle limped into the hangar bay. As medics swarmed around him, Andrew gritted out orders to pursue the retreating Iconians. He watched through pain-blurred eyes as his fleet gave chase, harrying the enemy's retreat. Hours later, Andrew stood on the Vengeance's bridge once more, his wounds hastily treated. The ship creaked and groaned around him, atmosphere leaking from multiple hull breaches as they approached the Saturn shipyards. All hands, he broadcast to the fleet. We've won a great victory today, but the real test is yet to come. Rearm, repair, and stand ready. The Iconians will return in force, and we must be prepared to make our final stand here, at the cradle of our civilization. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance. As the battered Vengeance docked for repairs, Andrew's gaze turned to the stars. Somewhere out there, an Iconian armada was mustering. He could only hope they'd be ready when it arrived. The ancient shipyards around Saturn hummed with frantic activity. Robotic assemblers welded hull plates and installed weapon systems at breakneck speed. Fresh warships rolled off the production lines every hour, their pristine hulls gleaming in the ringed planet's light. Andrew Gray stood on the observation deck, watching the controlled chaos. His uniform was still stained with blood and soot from the battle with Corv. A junior officer approached, datapad in hand. "Sir, long-range scout reports," she said, her voice tight with tension. Andrew scanned the information, his face hardening. "Confirm these numbers." "Already triple-checked, sir. It's a massive invasion force, larger than anything we've encountered." Andrew nodded grimly. "Summon the War Council, now." Hours later, he stood before Earth's remaining military and political leaders in a hastily converted conference room. The mood was grim as Andrew laid out the situation. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," he said bluntly. "This battle will decide humanity's fate." Heated debate erupted. Some advocated immediate surrender, others a suicidal last stand. In the end, a controversial decision was reached. "We'll begin evacuating civilians through the Saturn Stargate," the UN Secretary-General announced. "To our new colonies in Andromeda. It's our last resort if Earth falls." Andrew's expression resolute. "My fleets will neutralize the Iconian threat before it comes to that. We will not abandon our home." Days later, Andrew stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as human ships took up defensive positions around Saturn. The mighty orbital batteries of the ancient shipyards powered up, their weapon capacitors thrumming with destructive potential. A sensor officer called out, "Slipstream ruptures detected, multiple contacts emerging." The view screen filled with nightmare shapes, vast organic warships that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Their hulls bristled with weapon emplacements. "All ships open fire," Andrew ordered. A storm of missiles and energy beams lashed out at the Iconian vanguard, but the alien vessels shrugged off the barrage, their thick armor barely scratched. The Iconians returned fire. Space itself seemed to warp as their main guns unleashed devastation. Human fighters and bombers vanished in actinic flashes. Cruisers crumpled, their hulls peeled open by the alien weaponry. "Evasive maneuvers!" Andrew shouted as the Vengeance shuddered under a near miss. "Concentrate fire on their lead destroyers." The bridge rocked as another blast struck home. Damage reports flooded in from all decks. Through the chaos, a priority transmission cut through. "Admiral Gray," a familiar synthesized voice said. "This is Area, the autonomous warfighter AI that guided you to Luna. You must implement the Scorched Galaxy protocols. It's our only hope." Andrew's blood ran cold. He knew what those protocols entailed. There has to be another way. "Negative," Area replied. "The Iconians will overrun us within hours. You must act now." With a heavy heart, Andrew gave the order. "Initiate Scorched Galaxy. May God forgive us." Across the solar system, ancient doomsday weapons stirred to life. Antimatter warheads and devices beyond human understanding detonated in cataclysmic fury. Mercury vanished in a blinding flash. Venus's atmosphere burned away in seconds. Mars shattered like glass. The gas giants imploded, their very substance twisted into unreality. The shockwaves battered friend and foe alike. Human and Iconian ships were torn apart by the unrestrained energies unleashed. Saturn's rings disintegrated into swirling clouds of debris. When the devastation subsided, Andrew surveyed the cosmic wreckage through the Vengeance's cracked viewports. His fleet was reduced to a handful of crippled vessels, but the Iconian vanguard had fared no better. The surviving alien ships turned tail and fled. Andrew watched them go, feeling hollow inside. "Launch the hunter-killer drones," he ordered quietly. "Make sure none escape." In the following days, the grim work of evacuation began. Scattered survivors were ferried to the Andromeda Gate as radiation storms engulfed the blasted remnants of humanity's birthplace. Andrew stood on the bridge of the last ship to depart. He stared at the ravaged star system that had once been humanity's shining jewel. Now it was little more than a cosmic graveyard. As they prepared for the jump to Andromeda, Andrew addressed his weary crew. "We've become the very thing our ancestors fought against," he said. "Homeless, warlike, consumed by the need for vengeance. But mark my words, we will return. Even if it takes 1,000 years, we'll build an armada to crush the Iconians and reclaim what's ours." The slipstream drive engaged. In a flash of light, the last humans left their ruined home behind. The long road of rebuilding stretched before them, with only their ancient fleet as a foundation, and the burning desire for revenge that would fuel them across the millennia to come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.